everyone, with the Dragon Quest series really popping off right now, especially in the West for the first time in quite a while, I wanted to help out those of you who are new to the series, or maybe you've been with the series for a long time and you just haven't played all the games yet. I wanted to talk about the best way to play each of the mainline games. If you want me to do a video on spin-offs and the best way to play those, let me know down in the comments. But this video is purely about the mainline series, so Dragon Quest 1 through 11. This is the best way to play all of them. If you guys enjoy Dragon Quest content, top 10 videos, guides, reviews, all that good stuff, please remember to like, subscribe, turn notifications to all so you don't miss the next video. You can also hype the video on mobile. It helps out a ton. And if you want to help support the channel, be sure to join, get that membership, become a Dragon Warrior today. All right, now let's get into it, starting with Dragon Quest 1. Dragon Quest 1, originally known as Dragon Warrior back on the NES, came out when I was a young kid. This is the game that got me into JRPGs. It was my first JRPG of all time. Very simple, very basic game, and they really cranked it up to 11 with the release of Dragon Quest 1 HD 2D remake. So this is combined with Dragon Quest 2 as one release, but you can play them separately. So I'm just gonna say Dragon Quest 1 HD 2D is the absolute best way to experience the original game in all of its glory. Dragon Quest 2, same idea. Dragon Quest 2 HD 2D remake, easily the best way to play this. Dragon Quest 2, the original, or Dragon Warrior 2 back on the NES, was kind of an awful game in some aspects. It was definitely one of, if not my least favorite Dragon Quest game in the series until it was remade in HD 2D. They just added so much to the experience. They fixed everything that was wrong with the original, and they added a ton of depth to the characters. They added more individual abilities for each of the characters, and the story is just so much better. You get to know the world and the townspeople a lot better. This goes for Dragon Quest 1 HD 2D as well. They just did a phenomenal job of Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake, and there's really no other way I would recommend playing Dragon Quest 2, so that is definitely the best way to play Dragon Quest 2. Dragon Quest 3, similar story. Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D remake, there's no other way I would recommend playing it. The HD 2D remake just expands a ton on the story. It just feels all that much better to explore the world. The party building is a little bit better. There's obviously like post-game content in both this and Dragon Quest 2 HD 2D. I just feel like the HD 2D remake is by far the best way to play Dragon Quest 3, and that is the version I would recommend to anyone. For Dragon Quest 4, this is where it gets a bit tough. So Dragon Quest 4, originally, again, an NES game, Dragon Warrior 4 back on the NES. I love this game. This was my favorite game of all time for a very, very long time until I played Dragon Quest 11. If you want to check out where I rank all these mainline games, I did do a video ranking all 11 mainline Dragon Quest games. You can check that out right here on the channel. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check that out. But Dragon Quest 4 is like a top 2 to 4 game of all time for me still to this day. This one's really a toss-up. There's going to be a couple of these. There's probably about 3 in this video where I have a really tough time giving you like the definitive way to play these games, because something that the Dragon Quest series often suffers from is you're going to have versions of the game that came out after that are better in almost every way, but then worse in like 1 or 2 ways. So it's hard to recommend which would be the best way to go. I still really like the NES version, but you're going to get a lot more story in the DS and mobile remakes. Unfortunately, the DS remake, if you're playing the official release, you are not going to get access to party chat. They didn't add that until the mobile version remake, which is basically the same game as the DS remake, but you have to play it on your cell phone, which kind of sucks. So I highly recommend, I mean, if I'm going to give you the best way to play this, it's not necessarily going to be legal, okay? It's going to be the remake on the DS with the party chat mod added in there. Thankfully, someone was kind enough to add all the party chat into the DS game. There's a pre-modded ROM out there you can grab, and that's the best way to experience Dragon Quest 4, to be completely honest. If you're okay with playing games on your phone, then play the mobile version. It's got all the party chat. It's got everything you want from the DS remake and the original. I'm still partial. It's really hard for me to choose between the original and even the DS remake with the party chat included. Very hard, but it's probably just because I'm an old piece of shit. All right, on to Dragon Quest V. This is another one that's really tough. Definitely not the Super Famicom original. That is by far the worst way to play Dragon Quest V, in my opinion. It's a really big toss-up between the PS2 remake and the DS remake. Personally, I prefer the DS remake. I'm kind of a stickler when it comes to keeping the original art style that the original creators intended at the time. And I feel like Dragon Quest V on the DS is kind of what they wanted to do with the original Dragon Quest V. They just didn't understand what could be done with the Super Famicom yet at the time. Because if you compare Dragon Quest VI on the Super Famicom, which in my opinion is the absolute best looking game on the Super Famicom, to Dragon Quest V, which looks almost like an NES game, really, compared to Dragon Quest VI. It just blows your mind what they were able to figure out by the time Dragon Quest VI came out. So I feel like the sprite work and the art style and all that of Dragon Quest V on the DS is why I prefer that version, but there are many people who do prefer the PS2 version. Both of these versions, you can have 4 party members in your party instead of just 3, which was kind of dumb on the Super Famicom original, but you have access to more monsters in the DS version as well. But it just depends on your personal preference. Do you like kind of the more 3D polygonal models, or do you like the sprite work? It's up to you. That's really the biggest differences here. They both have some phenomenal post-game content and some good extra content in them. I just love them both. This is definitely the hardest one for me to choose because they're both really, really good. Like I said, it just boils down to your personal preference. If you prefer like the sprite work, go with the DS remake. If you prefer the kind of 3D look, then definitely check out the PS2 version. Dragon Quest VI, unlike every game I'm probably going to mention on this video, I still feel like the original is the best way to play Dragon Quest VI. So the first time I ever played Dragon Quest VI was the DS remake, and I remember not really liking it all that much. Maybe I was burnt out because I had just finished playing through Dragon Quest VII on the PS1, and then playing Dragon Quest IX on the DS, and then Dragon Quest V on the DS, and then Dragon Quest VI, of course, on the DS came out. So maybe I was just burnt out on Dragon Quest, but I've never really been burnt out on Dragon Quest any other time, so I'm not gonna blame that solely. But there was something about the DS version, and I'm not sure what it was, but I really was not the biggest fan of Dragon Quest VI after playing it. I know there was a lot more difficulty, especially in the later part of the game. I feel like the difficulty was much higher, and I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, I need the games to be super easy. Like, I do feel like, for example, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined on the default settings is definitely too easy. I recommend playing that on like the hard settings. Leave your EXP the same and leave your gold the same and proficiency the same, but everything else turn on to hard mode because it'll just be more enjoyable that way. When it comes to the difficulty of Dragon Quest VI on the DS, I really did feel like, especially like the final boss and the boss before him, I felt like there was such a difficulty spike that it just like came out of nowhere. And you had to like grind like crazy. Again, I like grinding, but I don't like it when you go all the way to the end and you're maybe a little underleveled, maybe a little overleveled, and the boss fight's still very challenging. You'll die a couple times, and you'll be able to eventually beat it if you keep trying, changing your strategy or whatnot. But when you hit a giant grind wall right at the very end, and the spike is that big, I'm not really a big fan of that. And I think that was the main thing that drove me away from Dragon Quest VI originally. And then a couple years ago, I played through the Super Famicom original for the first time ever, and I gotta say, I enjoyed my playthrough way better. So I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I just felt like it was maybe better balanced or something like that. The game is so gorgeous on the Super Famicom. That definitely contributed to my love for it. Whereas the DS game just looked similar to Dragon Quest V DS, right? It was still gorgeous. The character sprites are some of like the best designs in the series, in my opinion. The original on the Super Famicom is probably the one I would recommend you guys checking out. It's kind of weird because this is probably the only game on this list where I'm going to recommend the original as the best version. But yeah, definitely check out the Super Famicom version if you're going to try Dragon Quest VI for the first time ever. Dragon Quest VII. This is another tough one. I haven't finished Dragon Quest VII Reimagined yet at the recording of this video. I am probably about 3/4 of the way through though, and I've been really enjoying it. So this one is another one that's very tough to recommend a specific version over the others. I love the original. I definitely prefer the original over the 3DS remake, but I think I like Reimagined more than the 3DS remake. For this one, again, I'm gonna say it boils down to kind of personal preference. If you're a more like modern gamer, you don't like having to talk to all the NPCs, although I recommend it in all of these games because you're going to get extra story content, especially in Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. You're going to get extra story content, extra details. The world is going to feel more alive in this series. Highly recommend talking to all the characters in the Dragon Quest series. Anyway, if you're just wanting to experience what the main story has to offer and that's all you're really looking for, definitely check out Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. It is phenomenal. They did an amazing job of it. I love the moonlighting system where you have 2 different job classes at the same time. I love the way they did the world, where it's still very open and free. The magic carpet is freaking awesome in this game, and I've always loved the magic carpet, but it is top tier in this version. I feel like I like the characters more. They did such a good job getting across how the characters actually are, whereas even with all the party chat that the original had, and there was a ton, you could even party chat in battles in the original on the PS1, but I feel like with the voice acting and the voice direction, they did such a good job with Dragon Quest VII Reimagined that characters I actually hated before, like Maribel, I actually kind of like now. I'm also a really big fan of Aisha. I just feel like Reimagined is top tier. It is very good, but it is still really hard to recommend it over the original because of what the original has. If you're wanting to have a 140 to 200 hour experience and journey through this massive game with amazing stories that doesn't necessarily respect your time, but you're looking for something that's gonna engage you long term, you're looking for a more deep experience, then definitely play the original. But for everyone else, I would probably recommend Dragon Quest VII Reimagined as the best way to play Dragon Quest VII. Dragon Quest VIII. Now, this is the only one where I've only played one version of this game, but I do know a lot about the 3DS remake. I know that they added a lot of story content, especially when it comes to like the background of Dual Magus, who's kind of like the main villain. They added on-screen encounters, so all your encounters are going to be on-screen. There's no like random encounters in the 3DS remake. They've added like a fast-forward feature to combat, which is super nice. And they've added more playable characters. So without any spoilers, obviously, we're trying to keep the spoilers out of this. You can recruit 2 more characters in Dragon Quest VIII on the 3DS. I'm not going to say who these characters are, obviously, but they did have a decent amount to do with the story, especially one of them who I honestly thought was going to join the party in the original, but never really does. It is cool that you get those extra characters, there's extra content. In that aspect, the 3DS version is better. But the original on the PS2, there's something about it that to me still makes it the better version in my opinion, and this is why I've never played the 3DS remake, because I feel like I don't want to play like a lesser version of a game if I don't have to, right? And it's a longer game too. I'm not going to spend another like 60 to 80 hours playing what I would maybe consider an inferior version of the game. So I still would say the original is the best way to play it, because this was the first Dragon Quest game that had these amazing graphics, this huge, massive open world in a 3D graphical environment. I feel like the PS2 version is the best way to experience that. The graphics kind of look like Garbo on the 3DS, unfortunately. They don't look nearly as good as they do in the original. Obviously, the orchestrated soundtrack in the original, Dragon Quest VIII has one of the best soundtracks in the franchise. So you're really going to want to enjoy this to its fullest, and I feel like the best way to do that is honestly the PS2 version. Dragon Quest IX. This one kind of sucks to talk about, doesn't it? They mentioned that they wanted to do a remake quite a while ago. They were like, oh, I'd like to consider doing a Dragon Quest IX remake. I think it was when Dragon Quest III HD2D came out, or when it was almost out. The creators were talking about that. But we haven't heard anything since. They've never confirmed that they were actually even working on anything when it comes to Dragon Quest IX. I feel like Dragon Quest IX and like 4 are probably the ones that need a remake the most now. And Dragon Quest IX, as long as they don't like mess up the co-op gameplay like they did with Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered, I think would be an amazing game to play with friends, because it always was. But to be able to play online, instead of being in the same building as them to play co-op, would be absolutely amazing. I really hope Dragon Quest IX gets a remake soon, or we get some information on that. But for now, the DS version is the only way to play Dragon Quest IX. Dragon Quest X. I gotta go with the PC online version, okay? There's a lot of people in the Dragon Quest X offline community that get pissed off at me for saying this, but Dragon Quest X offline kinda sucks. If you ask anyone who's played the original, and by original I mean the online version of the game, I sometimes refer to the true version of the game that really upsets the offline players. The people who have played the online version and then were curious about offline, and so they checked it out, all of them will tell you it's inferior to the online version. There's definitely some cool things about the offline version. A lot of the story characters in the earlier versions, like version 1 and version 2, join your party and are like actual party members, which is kind of cool, because in online you recruit your party by going to the bar, and you'll recruit characters around your level, other players' characters, usually your friends, right? I usually go into my team, which is like a guild, and I'll pick people from my team or my friends list, and I'll add them to my party, and then they're in my party even if they're not online, and then when they log in again, they get all the EXP and gold that they would have got while they were in my party. So that's really cool. Obviously, you can play the whole dang thing 4-player co-op with your friends if you want, which is absolutely phenomenal and something that the offline version, again, does not have. All day long, I'm going to tell you to play the PC version online of Dragon Quest X. And if you're interested and you've never played it before, check out my guide right here on the channel on how to play Dragon Quest X in English for free. The only caveat being, if you live outside of Japan or the United States, you're gonna need a VPN. I recommend Bitdefender's VPN. It's done me no wrong. It's been excellent. I'm not sponsored or anything like that. I like to recommend the one that works, and that's the one that's been awesome for me. Next up, Dragon Quest XI. Obviously, I'm gonna go with the definitive edition. Originally released on the Nintendo Switch, this is now on all main consoles as well as Steam. You can play the definitive edition. It's sometimes called Dragon Quest XI's, sometimes just called Dragon Quest XI Definitive Edition, I think. I'm not too sure, but the original was great and was already my favorite game of all time. The definitive edition is even better. The only real downside of the definitive edition is that they kind of nerfed the graphics so that it would work on the Switch, whereas the original, the graphics are freaking amazing. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm sure if you get this on Steam, there's probably like mods and shit that you can put the old graphics back into the game, but I'm not a PC gamer by any means, so I'm gonna play this on PS4, PS5. I have a limited edition Dragon Quest XI's Switch. Literally the Switch I own and play everything on is my limited edition Dragon Quest XI's Nintendo Switch. So that's the first way I played this. I'm going to be replaying it on the PS4 version in the next little while, but yeah, definitely the definitive edition is the way to go. It adds story elements that deepen these already amazing characters and their stories. You also have the 2D mode. You can switch between 3D and 2D, and you can constantly go back to periods of the game that you want to re-experience, which is really nice, especially if you make content you need specific gameplay footage. But yeah, Dragon Quest XI's, the definitive edition, is the definitive way to play Dragon Quest XI. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you guys out in deciding on what version of each of the games to play and check out. I hope you enjoy all these games. Let me know your favorites down in the comments. Let me know your favorite versions of each of the games, or the ones you have played so far and the versions of the games you've played so far. I also have a video on my channel talking about which Dragon Quest game you should play first. It is not a guide in terms of me just telling you what you should play first. What it is it's me breaking down what each game has to offer to help each individual player figure out what game is more for them. So check that out if you haven't yet. It's right here on the channel. If you enjoyed this video and you want more Dragon Quest content, please remember to like, subscribe, turn notifications to all so you don't miss the next video. You can hype the video if you want more people to see it. And if you want to help support the channel, be sure to join the channel, become a Dragon Warrior today. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.